When you're ready to create an invoice, just go to your home screen and click on Create Invoices. The first thing QuickBooks wants to know is who is the customer and who is the job. Remember to always choose the job. And if this window pops up that says Available Estimates, that means that there is an estimate and you haven't pulled everything from that estimate. If you're not wanting to pull from an estimate, just click on Cancel and then you can fill out the form. The next thing I want to do over here is choose the class. And then notice the template. You do have the ability to change the template you're using for this invoice. We'll talk about templates in a later section, but templates basically allow you to change the look of your invoice. The next thing you'll see is you have the date. You want to make sure you choose the correct date that you're creating the invoice, and it will assign the next invoice number automatically. The next thing you'll see are the terms down here. Right now in the customer setup, my customer terms are set up to be due upon receipt. If I want to change that, you'll notice that the due date is now, in this case, 30 days from the date that I'm creating the invoice. Let's go ahead and look at the items. You want to click on the first line underneath the item, and then you'll see that you have a list of items that you can put on this invoice to invoice your customer for. We're going to talk about setting up items in a later section. These are the ones that are set up already. We'll go ahead and just invoice for some blueprints, and you can change the description to say anything you like. I'll just say the quantity is 2 and I want to charge $1,000 for each one. So you can see it did the calculation for me over here. And this is a non-taxable item, meaning it's not subject to sales tax. This U/M stands for unit of measurement. If you have an item that you sell by the foot, by the yard, by the case, you can set up that list and then you can choose it from the drop down here. I want to add one more line. I've done some repairs, and you can again go ahead and add anything you like to this description. Go ahead and put in your quantity. Something like this would probably be an hourly type thing. And even though it says 35, because that's the rate that's set up when the item was set up, I'm going to type over that and charge 55 per hour in this case. And you can see it did my calculation for me over here. And again, it's a non-taxable item. You'll notice that because these are both non-taxable items, that my tax shows as 0 in the bottom. There's the total of my invoice. If there were payments already applied, I would see them here. If you'd already saved this invoice once, and then maybe you'd received a payment towards this, when you open the invoice back up, it would show any payments applied. And then you'll see the balance due down here at the bottom. Over on the left-hand side, you have a place to add a customer message. If you don't like any of the ones that are set up for you already, go ahead and add a new one right here and it will show up in the list. There's also a place for a memo about this invoice, and that will not show up when you print. That way you can put anything you like there. And this customer is a taxable customer, but again, they're not going to be charged sales tax because the 2 items weren't subject to sales tax. That's a quick overview of how to actually set up the invoice itself. What I'd like to do now is take you up to the top of the screen so that you can see some of the options that you might want to use when you're creating your invoice. There are many different tabs here. You'll probably spend most of your time on the first tab, which is called Main, but we'll go through each one so that you'll know what your options are. The first thing I want to point out is the search option right here. You can use these arrows to go to the next or previous to search. If you can't find what you're looking for, click on this Find button, and you'll see that you can put in different criteria in order to search for the invoice you're looking for. You just want to hit Find after you put the criteria in. I'll just go ahead and cancel that. The next thing is you might want to create a new blank invoice. That's the same option as if you're at the very bottom and it says Save and New. That would give you a new blank invoice as well. The next option you're going to see is a Save option. If you've been working on this invoice for a while and you just don't want to take the chance that you're going to lose any of what you've already entered, You can go ahead and just hit save as often as you like. Notice you can also save this as a PDF file, and that's really good if you want to actually email this to your customer, but you don't want to do it inside of QuickBooks for whatever reason. If you've got it saved in your computer, you can just attach it. The next thing you'll see is an option to delete this invoice or to void it. If you delete it, it's going to be gone totally from QuickBooks, whereas if you void it, it will still show up, but it will have a zero balance. You can also create a copy of this. That's really good if you need another one very similar to this one. You can create a copy and make those few changes that you need. We're going to talk about memorizing in a later section, but memorizing will just allow you to save this and then tell QuickBooks that you want it to automatically enter it for you on a regular basis. Sometimes you might want to mark an invoice as pending. And if you do, you'll see it says pending right here. It's non-posting. That means it will not show up in your accounts receivable reports until you're ready. You can go back and mark it as final, and then now it's back as part of your accounts receivable. You can print a few different things here. I'll just preview this so you can see what it looks like. You can see here that it has the word invoice at the top and it has your company name and address, but it's really pretty plain. You can go ahead and customize that, and we'll look at that in a later section. As far as printing, you can also go ahead and print the invoice here or print the batch. And the batch means if you check print later on several different invoices you've created and you want to send them all at the same time, you would send the batch. You can also print a packing slip, a shipping label, and an envelope. If you print an envelope, it does a mail merge with Microsoft Word, and it basically will pull this information onto your envelope. You can also email this invoice to your customer. You can email this one invoice or the batch, just like we talked about with printing. You can check email later on several and then email them all at the same time. You can attach a file. Maybe you had scanned a copy of something that you want to attach to this. You'll be able to attach it right here. Here's something new you haven't seen. Add time/cost. I'll just click on that. You might have some time or some expenses, mileage or items that you incur and want to turn around and get reimbursed from your customer for. Those would show up under one of these tabs, and you would just check them off and click OK, and QuickBooks would pull it into this invoice. The way that items get onto these tabs is you'll notice when you're creating an expense, maybe you used your debit card somewhere to purchase something, there's a field there for the customer and job, and if you've filled that out, it will show up in this list to be checked off if you need it. You can also apply any credit memos that you've created to this invoice, and you can also receive payments against this invoice here. Chances are you won't be on this screen when you're ready to receive a payment. You can do it from your home screen, but this option is here. Two more things. Create a batch. Sometimes there's one invoice you need to send, but it needs to go to multiple customers. Maybe there are 3 customers that are each going to pay a third of this. You have the ability to do that by creating a batch. You also may want to issue a refund or a credit for this invoice. You can do that right here. Those are the options under the main tab, and you're going to use those most of the time. But let's look at a couple more things. There's a formatting tab. These options right here have to do with customizing your template. We're going to discuss that in a later section. Here's your spell check. Make sure you always run your spell check. You can also insert a line above where you're clicked. You can delete the line you're clicked on or copy the line. And then this again has to do with customizing your template. If you send items, you can go ahead from here and set your item up to be shipped through FedEx, UPS, or the United States Postal Service. This will take you to their website where you can go ahead and schedule that pickup. These have to do with mail merges with Microsoft Word. Let's look at a couple of quick reports. You can always run a quick report on this customer job. And then you can always look at a transaction history, and what that would show you is If you've already invoiced this and saved it and you wanted to see any transactions related to it, like a payment or a credit memo, it would just show you the whole history. You can also look at what's called a transaction journal, and this is something that QuickBooks does behind the scenes for this invoice, very similar to the transaction history, but a little bit different. You can see any open invoices, sales by customer, and this would be the detail report, and then there's an average days to pay summary. The last thing I want to mention is the search tab, which is new in this version. Again, if you're searching, we saw you could search under the main tab, but you can also search through this invoice in particular for something. If you had a lot of lines here and you're searching for a particular word, you can put that word in and search up or down and see if you can find it that way. That gives you a lot of options to think about when you're actually creating your invoice. I'm going to hit Save and Close at the bottom. If you did not have an email address set up for your customer, but yet you have email later checked here, it will pop up and ask you to provide that. In this case, I'm going to cancel that and uncheck email later. Now when I save and close, it will not ask me that. The next thing it's asking me here in this case is I changed the terms for my customer, and it's asking if I want to change those permanently in the customer's record. I'll just go ahead and say yes. And now that invoice has been created. If I go back to my customer center and look, you'll see that we have the estimate that we did in the previous few videos, those two invoices we did from the estimate, and now we have this new invoice that we just created. And that's how you're going to create invoices in QuickBooks for products and services. Now that you know how to create invoices, let's go ahead and go over to the next video, which happens to be number 10. And we're going to talk about how do you receive payments against those invoices.